Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Welcome to Lady Khadija Online College. A-Level Maths Year 1 live lesson. Today we are going to take a look at splitting fractions. So we're going through the introductory chapter on simplifying algebra, just to try and strengthen up your GCSE algebraic manipulation. That means how you can turn little bits of algebra into something simpler. And today we're going to take a look at splitting fractions. So imagine you have a fraction which has got a numerator of x to the power 3 plus x to the power 5, and on the denominator we have x to the power 2. So to be able to simplify this kind of fraction, what you have to try to do is a splitting technique. So firstly, let me just make it a little bit easier to see. So here, what you notice is that there's only one term on the denominator, and that whenever that's the case, then you can use this technique. On the numerator, there can be a plus or a minus, but just one or the other, a plus or a minus. Even can be a couple of terms, maybe a few or maybe even 4. As long as it's pluses and minuses in between, then we can use a splitting technique. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and split this fraction into 2 fractions by just splitting it down the middle. So the denominator x squared will stay as the denominator in both fractions, but we will have on the first fraction x cubed on the top. On the bottom we will have x squared. Then will come the plus. Then will come the second fraction, which is x to the power 5 on the top and x squared on the bottom. And the advantage of doing that is that now we can quite easily apply the division law on each fraction. So we've got x cubed divided by x squared. The base is the same, so we're just going to take away the powers. 3 take away 2. So that will make x to the power 1 plus, and then we apply the same law here. 5 take away 2 is x to the power 3. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is you could have just cancelled the powers, and sometimes that works out better, especially if the top power is smaller than the bottom power. But here it worked out fine just to do the subtraction, so that is quite a nice easy one to start off with. Let's use the same technique of splitting fractions, but this time let's go for a slightly harder example. So we are going to go, let me just check my notes. So 3x squared minus 6x to the power 5 all over 2x. So let me just put in those powers now while you have a think about how this split is going to be done. So I've got 3x squared minus 6x to the power 5 all over 2x. So here it's worth putting in a power 1 on the x. X is really power 1, so that's worth just putting it in right now just to make it a bit easier later. Then the split can happen either before the minus or after the minus, it doesn't really matter. Remember, the denominator is going to stay the same on both. So we are going to have a new fraction of 3x squared over 2x. Remember that x is really power 1. Then we've got the takeaway, then the second fraction, 6x to the power 5, and that's going to be again over 2x. So here we've got the main technique because you've just used it here. X to the power 3, x to the power 2, you know you're going to subtract the powers. So if you can be confident in that, and I'll just make the focus on this one here by making a bit more white space. So we've got x to the power 2 and then x to the power 1. So we should be comfortable with that. Let's take a look at the numbers 3 over 2. 3 over 2, that's a fraction that we can't really simplify much further, so we're just going to leave it as 3 over 2 on the numbers. And then x squared over x to the power 1, 2 take away 1 is 1, so that's going to be x to the power 1. And we don't really need the power 1, so we can just drop that. So that's going to be 3x over 2. Let's take a look at the next one. Now here we've got 6 over 2, so we can do something with that. 6 over 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3. So on the top I'll just have 3. Then I've got x to the power 5, and this is really x to the power 1. So it's going to be x using the same law. 5 take away 1 is going to be 4. So that worked out quite nicely. Nothing to write on the bottom, so we don't even need that divide line, because the 6 divided by 2 made 3 perfectly. X to the power 5 divided by x to the power 1, that made x to the power 4 perfectly. So there was no need for anything left over on the bottom. Sometimes you will have something on the bottom when this bottom power is bigger than the top. Okay, that's that one done. So nice and easy, even when there were a couple of numbers there. So then let's take a look at the last example for today. 20x to the power 7 plus 15x to the power 3, and that's all over 5x to the power 2. So let me just put those powers in while you have a think about this one. So again, we're going to use the splitting technique. We're just going to split down here. So we are going to end up with, again, two simpler fractions. So we'll have 20x to the power 7. And on the bottom, we'll have 5x squared. So think about this one. Again, use the technique we've used before. In the middle will be a plus. And on the second one, 15x to the power 3. And on the bottom 5x squared. So have a think about this one, really using the same techniques as before. Just gonna give a bit more space and focus on this question here. So let's take a look at the numbers first. 20 divided by 5, that's going to be 4. So we can just write 4. X to the power 7 divided by x to the power 2. Take away 7 by the 2, and that's going to be 5. Then on this one, 15 divided by 5 is going to be 3. X to the power 3 divided by x to the power 2, that's x to the power 1. And that one is done. So that's splitting fractions, and hopefully you found that quite easy. We will continue more tomorrow with some more simplifying algebra. Join me again every day, Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. UK time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you, and the mercy and blessings of God.